I misspeak a little bit in this episode. I say Senate when I mean House of Representatives, and I say Congress when I mean House of Representatives. You'll see what I'm talking about. Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Let's talk about TikTok and the TikTok ban. It is currently March of 2024. Normally, I like to try to keep these episodes somewhat evergreen, but anyways, let's jump right into it. So, the TikTok ban. Lawmakers, in a thus far Senate-supported bipartisan issue, lawmakers are saying, get that filthy word ban out of your mouth. This isn't a ban on TikTok. We're not trying to, they're saying, we're not trying to ban TikTok. We're not trying to take away TikTok. We're just giving them the choice. We are giving TikTok the choice to sell to another company or sell to other companies so that it is not owned by a company called ByteDance, which is a Chinese company and therefore falls under the umbrella of the Chinese Communist government. But that's the guise, at least. That's that the lawmakers are projecting to us. That's the guise. We're not trying to ban this. We just want TikTok to sell to other companies. You know, other companies is preferably American. So, why is this important? Why has this gotten traction? What is the argument here that lawmakers are coming up with, which is why they would ban TikTok and not Facebook or any other social media platform? Well, it's what I mentioned before. Since the parent company that owns TikTok, it's called ByteDance, ByteDance. ByteDance is owned by a Chinese company, therefore under the communist umbrella of the Chinese government. They're saying that it's risky for Americans, that it compromises our national security, that a Chinese company have access to American users' data, that it can be used in nefarious ways or sold to Iran or done this or that, whatever, that it is controlled by a, quote, in their terms, a foreign adversary. So it's a risk. They don't want Americans' data being accessed willy-nilly by the Chinese government. That's the guise. Now, let me now this is my commentary on it. Now, this is that's important for me to distinguish here because you won't listen to a lot of talk radio and hear the host say, mention out loud that the following is only their commentary. No, they'll preach it like the gospel truth, and I'll get off of that sidetrack there. But here is my commentary on the situation, and it is common commentary that is shared by lots of people, that basically, in my opinion, this is a very thinly veiled guise to allow American companies access to billions, if not trillions of dollars worth of, yes, American data, usage statistics and things like that, cookies and all that whole thing about tracking Americans' data, what they're looking at, what they're buying, what they're saying about so-and-so, what's going on, just access to American data. And the truth is, again, in my opinion, that access to American data, over 170 million U.S. TikTok users in this country, and that data is worth billions, if not trillions of dollars. That's what's really happening here, is that the U.S. government and their cronies and lobbyists and possibly people like Mark Zuckerberg, I don't know, that's my conspiracy theory there, that there's no way you can basically give another government, be it the Chinese government or whatever, unrestricted access to billions, if not trillions of dollars worth of valuable data. We want an American company. We want, this is the U.S. government, we want an American company to have control of TikTok and therefore have control to that this never-ending spring of billions of dollars worth of U.S. data. So it's not that the Chinese government is selling your data. It's really that the U.S. government is not able to sell that data. They want access to the data. An American company should, quote unquote, have access to that data. That's the real issue here. That's why TikTok is on the chopping block. That's why it's under the umbrella of this purported ban, even though they don't want us to use the word ban. It's sell to an American company, or else we won't list your app, TikTok, on American app stores, the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store. That's all it is. It's a money play. Like anything else, it's a money play. And it should be kind of alarming that, at least in the Senate so far, that it's such a bipartisan issue. Our politics in this country, in the United States, are more divided than ever. And then lickety split. They're all agreed, other than 62 of them about 60 of them in the House of, in the Senate. Not the House of Senate, just in the Senate. They bipartisan agreed on this bill to pass it on to Congress and have it voted on from there. That's kind of alarming. We can't agree on anything but TikTok all of a sudden. Bipartisan support for this. Yes, that's much, and they need to sell to another company. There's no way that the Chinese that the information, that user data should be streaming to somebody else without going through our hands first, without us profiting on it first. That's the real play here. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, Meta, a lot of y'all are on Meta, they sell your data to other companies. It doesn't have to just be American companies. You sell your data to companies around the world. What's the difference? Oh, one is the Chinese government. That's the scare tactic. That's the play. They're hoping that it catches on as a national security issue, but it's not an issue. It's a money issue. Only American companies should have access to those billions and trillions of dollars worth of user data. AI, the amount of material you can feed into American AI companies with user data from TikTok alone is worth billions, if not trillions of dollars. That is the reason behind this bill. It is not some national security issue. It's just that the U.S. government wants to make sure that only U.S. companies can sell your data to other people. That's what's already happening with Facebook and all the other Meta-based American companies. They're already selling your data to the Chinese. They can't just allow the Chinese to have unrestricted access to that data without paying the U.S. government first. That's what this is all about. That's the only thing that this is all about. So it's not some virtuous national security issue or it's the Chinese government and everything like that. And they're just propagating propaganda and all sorts of things. Not for one thing, there's TikTok, whatever. I won't get into it. It's not that. It's simply about the money. It's simply about TikTok sitting on billions, if not trillions of dollars worth of user data that the American company should have access to selling. It has to go through us, we the middleman first. More Geek Therapy Radio, don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. In segment 1, the previous segment, I was talking about the actual truth, in my opinion, and many, many other people's opinions, about TikTok, the TikTok ban, the proposed legislation that's now going to move on to Congress eventually and be voted on. It moved out of the Senate, full bipartisan support. About 60 senators did not agree. They voted nay, but the vast majority of senators, bipartisan, voted to move this proposed TikTok ban, quote unquote, to Congress to be voted on further and made a law. In my opinion, and in many other people's opinion, it's not a national security issue. They tout it as a national security issue so that the Chinese won't have access to American data, but what it's really about is that the user data on TikTok is worth billions, if not trillions of dollars, and the U.S. needs their cut of it first. It can't be that the Chinese sell your data to other companies. American companies have to sell American data to other companies, and they're just going to sell it right back to China. That's already what Meta does. That's already what Facebook does. They're not going after Meta Facebook. They're not going after Instagram, which is under the umbrella of Meta. They're only going after TikTok because it has 170 American users, 170 million American users, and user data of about half of the population of the United States. That's billions and trillions of dollars worth of data that they can feed into American AI companies to track your usage, to see what they can sell you, to see how much quicker they can suggest to you things on Jeff Bezos, part of Amazon and everything. It's just that TikTok has user data for 170 million Americans, and nobody is paying the American government or an American company for that user data yet. This is all the proposed TikTok ban is. It's not about, somebody please think about the children. It's not about that. It's about the money grab. If American data is going to be sold, American companies need to be the ones selling that American data. So the ban on TikTok, the proposed ban of TikTok, is not really a ban. They don't want you to say that. The lawmakers don't want you to use that quote unquote filthy word. It's not a ban. We're just saying that TikTok has to sell to an American company or another company that's not owned by the communist Chinese government or another quote unquote foreign adversary. That's not what it is. It's a money grab. Billions and trillions of dollars worth of American user data up for grabs. And they don't want it funneling just to the Chinese. They need to tap into that first to feed their AI algorithms and everything like that. 170 million American users on TikTok. That's what it's about. That's all it's about. It's nothing virtuous. It's not about American safety. It's about money, honey, as it always is. Let's move on to another topic. I've been very hot under the collar about the TikTok thing because I don't have a huge TikTok following. I mean, on my personal account, it is my personal account, Geek Therapy Radio. I do have a TikTok. I have 100 or so followers. I don't even know. I don't put a whole lot of effort into TikTok, and maybe I should. So I don't have any sort of like vested interest in the success of TikTok, necessarily, but it's just, when they say it's not a ban, it's basically just sell it to another company or else we will ban it. That's like, and it has such bipartisan support. There's lobbyists on all sides and benefactors to these lawmakers on all sides that are going to profit richly off of the treasure trove of billions and trillions of dollars worth of TikTok's American user data. Next subject for real, though. As you can see, not that you would know necessarily, but I'm holding my Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra right here. My Z Fold 4, I mailed that off to Samsung to get an estimate on fixing its issues. I've talked about, on the past episode or two of Geek Therapy Radio that my Z Fold 4 had developed this malfunction where the S Pen could only be detected sometimes under the middle part of the right side of the screen, and as soon as you go past that to the left side of the screen, the cursor will disappear, that the cursor for the S Pen will only appear under the middle of the right side of the screen, and that the screen rotation wouldn't work anymore. You turn on the phone, screen rotation would work for a minute, not even for a minute, a couple of rotates, and then it would stop working. So there was something wrong with that chip, that processor, which also controls the S Pen and all sorts of other orientation features of the phone. So I sent it off to Samsung, and I'm hoping still that it's kind of maybe a firmware update, like the new UI 6.1 might come to the Z Fold 4. I haven't heard officially that it will come to the Z Fold 4, but I'm kind of hoping that a firmware update will fix these issues. I sent it to Samsung anyways because the last few little security patches didn't fix anything. Not that I really thought they would, but the way the sensor's throwing faults, I'd be pleasantly surprised if it was just a firmware update. But everything told me also, I was 50-50 on this. I was like, well, maybe the sensor is throwing errors. It is displaying like malfunctions that are consistent with an actual error on the chip. So let me just send it to Samsung and see what they say. Well, they got back to me and they said, hey, your warranty expired on the Z Fold 4 on January of 2024, which is very convenient for problems to be showing up right after the warranty expires. So I sent it in, and from their description, they said you needed a new screen, like a new motherboard, a new this and that, and their estimate was, drum roll, $1,100. $1,106 or whatever it was going to be to repair a phone that I did not spend that much money. I didn't spend $1,100 on the Z Fold 4. I think I spent just under that, like around $1,000 for it. Maybe it was $1,100, but the fact is, like, either way, it wasn't $1,100 to repair a phone that's not worth $1,100 anymore, and that I probably only spent $1,100 on in the first place. I responded with cancel, send it back to me. I am not spending that much money. Again, if you caught what I said earlier, I'm on the S24 Ultra right now. My Note 9, which I do still have in front of me right here, was for the kind of work that I do on it. It was getting long in the tooth, and the battery issues, it was getting hot all the time, just running constantly all the time, just getting warm. Had to constantly keep my Note 9 on the charger. My wife's Note 9 is just fine. She's not having any issues with it. But again, I think my use case scenario is a bit different. I'm editing videos a lot of times. I'm working with a lot of video footage. I am constantly on Microsoft Teams. It's constantly going, constantly getting push updates, constantly da-da-da-da. Note 9 wasn't hacking it. My Z Fold 4 was broken. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to upgrade a year earlier, 6 months earlier than I typically even consider phone upgrading. I upgraded to the S24 Ultra. I do a lot of video work, record a lot of video. I wanted to have the best kind of mainstream camera available right now on my phone, and it is wonderful. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, I'm obviously not using my smartphone to record this. There's too much background blur, so narrow depth of field here. Actually, I want to say, the camera you're looking at right here is the first generation Panasonic Lumix S5, and I have the 50 millimeter 1.8 Lumix S lens on it, and it's a very nice looking lens. And I'm just using natural lighting. I'm upstairs in the new Geek Therapy Radio studio, since I'm expecting baby boy number 2 this spring. I have given up that room to be my oldest son's new room. Either way, Daddy doesn't have an office anymore. I'm out here in the play area upstairs, the upstairs living room, whatever you want to call it. It's not very big. It is pretty tight around here, but I'm using natural lighting. This is the lighting coming out of the windows downstairs in the living room. So anyways, Lumix S5, that's the camera I'm using with the 1.8 50 millimeter Lumix S lens on it. And this is kind of the first video that I'm uploading using this lens, and I'm only recording 1080p right now. So it still should look pretty good. If you're noticing any focusing issues, and this is kind of even for radio listener, podcast listener, the first generation Samsung Lumix S5 does not have a class leading autofocus. So if you're watching this right now, 24 frames a second, 1080p, the autofocus isn't probably going to be as perfect as the new S Mark II or S Mark II X or any Canon cameras or Sony camera. First generation Panny S5. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome to the third segment of Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger, and I guess now I'll do the plugs. GeekTherapyRadio.com. You can visit there, chat with me there. You can also email me directly, Johnny, JOHNNY, at GeekTherapyRadio.com. Follow me across all the socials. I was talking about TikTok earlier. I do have Geek Therapy Radio on TikTok, so you can follow me there. I upload videos from time to time. I should do more work on my Geek Therapy Radio TikTok account. But yeah, I've got a Geek Therapy Radio on TikTok, and of course YouTube. If you're watching this already on YouTube, that's a little redundant. But for those of you driving around listening on the radio or listening to the podcast, Geek Therapy Radio podcast on YouTube, and of course Instagram and X and Facebook, it's all Geek Therapy Radio. If you're just listening to this broadcast on the AM radio or on the radio right now, you can download the podcast. Of course, the iHeartRadio app, Pocket Casts, the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, all the good stuff. Just search for Geek Therapy Radio Podcast, and that's me. It should come up pretty quick, but just in case it's me, you're seeing me and somebody else on there or whatever, I'm the red, white, and black color scheme. So if you type in Geek Therapy Radio Podcast into anything, I'm the red and white black color scheme, in the Geek Therapy Radio logo and whatnot. That's just the scheme of Geek Therapy Radio is red and black, really. That's when people ask me, oh, what's your favorite color? I remember Riker, my 3-year-old son, asked, what's your favorite color, Daddy? Is like, complicated, because I don't know if I have a single favorite color, but my favorite color scheme is red and black. And for some reason, I completely did not plan on going off on this tangent, but let's talk cars for a second. So back in 2020, I keep bumping the microphone here, me and the High Tech Texan, a fellow host here on KPRC 950 AM, my home radio station for Geek Therapy Radio, he got access to the 2020 Corvette, the new, at the time, C8 Corvette. It has a blue Stingray. It was awesome, and I went on a ride along with him. I even made a video for Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube about my kind of impressions of the C20 2020 Corvette, the C8 2020 Corvette. C8 just stands for Corvette 8. It's the 8th generation of Corvette. My nephew, by the way, and we're talking about Corvettes a little bit here. And red and black color scheme is what reminded me of it. My nephew, Spencer, we'll have to talk to him. I have to get Spencer on the show and talk to him about it. His first car, he just bought his first car. He was driving around in his grandma's PT Cruiser for a while, and he had that thing pimped out. Pretty cool, but he's finally got his first cool car. It's his DeLorean moment, I like to call it. Like when I got my DeLorean, bought my DeLorean. He got a Corvette. He got a C4 Corvette, which is cool. I think it's an 80, I want to say it's an 86 or an 85. I'll have to double check. I'll have to get them on the show. But it's red with black trim and everything. That's my color scheme. It's awesome. He's going to fix it up a little bit. That's the rule, is that he's not allowed to drive it until he's, I think, 18 years old, which that's probably okay. There's a reason why kids' first cars aren't sports cars. They aren't typically sports cars. You need to get comfortable with just the safe operation of a vehicle, period, first, in respect for engine power and fuel wheels slipping. If you can drive a PT Cruiser pretty safely, if you've spun the wheels in a PT Cruiser, you're gonna spin the wheels in an old Corvette. That's just what's gonna happen. So it's good to have a few years of PT Cruiser under the belt before you step up to basically any generation of a Corvette, especially older generations of Corvette that don't have the anti-lock brakes. I'm not saying the C4 doesn't have anti-lock brakes. Does it? I don't know off the top of my head here, but the DeLorean doesn't have anti-lock brakes, although it's not a powerful car. I remember a story my friend told me at the time. I'm going to throw him under the bus here a little bit, Corbin. He told me back when we were in high school, he used to go through cars, trade through cars. He would have a new car every 2 weeks, it seemed like. He just keep trading around, trading up, trading down, for other cars. And at this particular moment in time, he had, what was it? It was like a 70-something Camaro, Chevy Camaro that was completely geared for drag racing. Had I swear it had slicks on the back. It had the roll bars underneath. It had the cage built into the chassis. I think the passenger seat didn't exist. And so he has that. He's traded his way. I think previously he had a Nissan 240SX, which he should have kept. I told him at the time in the late 90s, dude, keep this Nissan. This is going to be worth something one day. It's already an excellent car. It's a 5-speed manual Nissan 240SX. It was just awesome. I was like, Corbin, stay with this one. Keep this one for a long time. He didn't. So after that Nissan 240, he got that 1970 whatever Camaro that was geared for drag racing, had the cage built in on the inside, was it said red primer paint, orange. It was dingy and whatever, had some patina. And he pulled it up to the house, and I was like, oh, sweet, man. It was really stupidly loud. I was like, yeah, can I take it around the block? I was 18 years old, 17, 18 years old at the time. Maybe we were a little younger, 16. My dad had taught me manual transmission. I had a year or two under the belt of driving manual transmission and everything like that. It's like, yeah, let me Let me drive this old Camaro. Corbin, he puts his arm over the wheel like he's a I'll just say badass, and he's like, you couldn't handle the torque, bro. And I laughed. I'm gonna say ass again. I laughed my ass off because you couldn't handle the torque, bro. I was like, okay, dude. All right, whatever. Love you, man. Have fun. He drove away. Next day, he wrapped it around a tree. He's fine. He's okay. He did not get seriously injured in that accident, if I recall. I think he hurt his leg. But he wrapped it around the tree like less than a mile from our house, from my house at least. And he called me the next day, or I saw him the next day or whatever. I was like, glad you're okay, but couldn't handle the torque, bro, could you? So I don't know. So back to the black and red color scheme being my scheme, and why it reminded me of Corvettes. And I was riding around in the year 2020 with Michael Garfield, Hyde to Texan, and a blue Stingray Corvette, C8 Corvette. I said back then, in 2020, I was like, if I had this kind of money to spend, and the Corvette was really going to be $63,000 for the base model, if that was ever going to be true, then I would, and I could afford it, then I want a Corvette. It would be the first Corvette I want. Mid-engine, looks fantastic. It still looks fantastic. But here's a weird thing that I've kind of noticed now. I no longer am interested in a C8 Corvette. Like, even if I had the space in the driveway and the money for it, like my zest for the C8 Corvette has dwindled a little bit. Now, if someone came along, C8 Corvette, 30,000 miles, and I saw it on there on Auto Trader for like 35 grand, 40, something like that, there may be some increased sleepless nights where I'm scrolling through Auto Trader, like doing the mental math, like, how can I make this work? How financially what would I have to sell? Could this be the daddy cruiser? How many child seats could I put would I be willing to put a child seat in? And then, like, there'd be several sleepless nights of that. If it was at a low enough price point, I'd at least go through that phase of kind of scrolling through Auto Trader and Facebook Marketplace and all that, if there was a C8 Corvette for between 30 and 40 grand. But right now, my zeal, my interest in the C8 Corvette has come and gone, because there's just too many of them now. I see them all over the place. It's no longer kind of a unique thing, a cool thing to see a C8 Corvette, because I don't know wherever you're listening to this in the world. I live in Missouri City, outskirts of Houston, Texas, and just driving around Houston, driving around the Galleria, driving around Montrose, driving around Kingwood, driving around Humboldt, driving around Sugar Land, everywhere. They're C8 Corvettes. They're no longer kind of like this unique, rare thing to have. They certainly don't justify the price tag anymore. It is asinine that anyone would pay $20,000, $30,000 over sticker for a C8 Corvette for 2020, 2021, 2022, 23, 24 C8 Corvette. It's ridiculous. Like, yeah, they should be around 50 grand right now all day long. But even still, like, it's the fact that there's is there still a waiting list for C8 Corvettes for new ones? Maybe. I think there, last I heard there was. The last I heard, I went to Elite Chevy here in Sugar Land, 59 and Highway 90. I got that battery replacement in my Bolt, and I just talking about C8 Corvettes. And at that time, this was just a few months ago, there were still waiting lists on C8 Corvettes. The service guy was telling me, yeah, there's probably a handful of Houstonians here that could just call us up right now and get a Corvette. They would still have to pay, well over the sticker and talk to the previous person in line about buying their spot, whatever. That was a few months ago. I don't know if there's a waiting list for C8 Corvettes now, but I see them everywhere. I see them often enough now that I'm just like, it's not unique anymore. It's not. I'd be driving it around and see 2 or 3 or 4 just on that drive within 5 miles. So whatever. I'm kind of off the C8 Corvette kick. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty, welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. We are now in the 4th segment of Geek Therapy Radio, and I spent the bulk of the show already talking about the proposed TikTok ban, what it really means, in my opinion, what the real the real motivation behind it is that it's not about protecting your American data from foreign adversaries. It's about letting American companies tap into the user data of 170 million Americans so that they can sell it to the Chinese. So that at least American companies are the ones able to sell your data to the Chinese and to other people, just like Zuck does. That's the real motive behind it. And it's so thinly veiled. And then just how kind of shocking, putting on a conspiracy hat for a second, how kind of very eye-opening it is that it has such bipartisan support in our country, in our divided political landscape, that this proposed TikTok ban has overwhelming bipartisan support so far yet in the Senate, as it passed the Senate. That should be an eyebrow raiser. I don't care where you are on the political spectrum, whether you are conservative or liberal or any sort of mix. I think most Americans, actually, if you were to sit around a barbecue and eating chicken and steak and throwing water balloons and whatever, you'd find that most Americans are pretty center. They just kind of tip a little bit this way or that on specific subjects. This narrative that basically that we're so divided that it's your Trumpkin neighbor versus your let's go Brandon neighbor, and against your Joe Biden supporting and Trump supporting, all just old men. Basically, old men running our government. Don't get me started. That it's not so divided. That this narrative in the media, I call it mainstream MSTR, mainstream talk radio, and Fox News, and all sorts, is basic, and on the liberal channels too. C-SPAN. I almost said C-SPAN. MSNBC. The liberal outlets kind of keep driving this narrative that we're so divided, that we Americans don't agree on anything. We are at each other's throats. We hate each other. That the reality is that most of us are just kind of in the middle. That even the most conservative labeled person actually has a lot of socialist ideas or things that they actually agree with. And a lot of liberals actually are very much more conservative than you might think too. And the only way you find out about that is bonding over hobbies. That's why Geek Therapy Radio exists, so that we can come together, all different spectrums of life and politics and religion and whatever, and just bond over Star Wars and Star Trek and action figures and Legos and video games and computers and audio engineering. That's what most Americans are. That's where most Americans exist, is that we are pretty moderate in our political views one way or the other. We don't have anybody representing us like that. We don't have anybody who's like, yeah, this, but also this. We can have both things here. Like, yeah, we could... I'm not trying to get super duper political on here, but it's like, yeah, we can keep our guns, but also do better things to make sure that children can come home from school. You know, like we're America. Why can't we do both? Like, most liberals own guns. That's just a straight up fact in the United States. You would think that it's the people who don't own guns being the biggest lobbyists to be anti-gun, take the guns away, whatever. Like, that's not true. Democrats have guns. Liberals have tons of guns. They don't wear it on their sleeve. Like, you know, I think like most gun owners, even if you're a conservative gun owner, most gun owners don't wear their gun politics on their sleeves, or the fact that they have guns on their sleeves. Most Democrats own guns. Most liberals in the United States own guns. Straight up fact. Most liberals own guns. So it's not about taking guns away. It's like, hey, y'all were so bipartisan on the TikTok thing, just out of nowhere. Like, whoa, we got almost everybody in government agreed, coming across the aisle to agree to sell TikTok to an American company so that Americans can tap into that money well of American user data. Y'all agreed on that, real lickety split. But like, 20 kids don't come home from school. I don't want to get too graphic with it, but they are at rest in a schoolroom right there. Somebody blew them all away. We can't get bipartisan on that. That like dead. Y'all can't come together 360 or whatever to 60 or whatever I don't know the full count here. But y'all can't come together that unanimously to make sure that kids don't have to die in the classroom. Really? Like, TikTok is the thing that you got y'all together lickety split to agree on something? TikTok did? TikTok? Like craziness, absolute craziness. But again, I say it's just follow the money. That's the real answer there. But anyways, we're just not that divided. This narrative that we are so divided, it's just not true. Most of us are, we agree on 99% of things in our life. I've mentioned this on Geek Therapy Radio before, that each human being is a totem pole. You know, a totem pole has different figures and different kind of depicted animals and different scenes and things like that. And it's very complicated, very ornate, that each person is an individual kind of totem pole. What makes them them? Their family, their job, their ethnicity, their culture, whatever. We have all these differing totem poles of people, and then only one of the totems, let's say each person is a totem pole of 100 different tiles or 100 different segments of a totem pole. One of those segments, only one of those 100 segments is our political identity. Only one. The other 99 of those segments are things that we both have in common, that we celebrate about each other. Some people have the totem pole Star Wars geek, and a lot of other people have on the totem pole Star Wars geek, and all the other pieces of the totem pole that they just want safety for their family. They just want to be able to provide for their family, provide for their children, provide for themselves. They're these very basic human desires that we have. Regardless of politics, we want the same thing. We want a lot of the same thing. Some argue that that's why. I think the real reason TikTok is being, the discussion of banning it is so unanimously supported within our government. One reason is that TikTok was broadly appealing to a very wide group of people. You could see somebody with 1 million views talking about pro-conservative values. You could see somebody with 1 million views that are talking liberal values or whatever. There's this kind of equal melting pot, and you saw people of all ages. There are elderly people that are very popular on TikTok. Younger people are popular on TikTok. It's the Taylor Swift of social media. It appeals to just every generation, and every generation is on TikTok, and every walk of life is on TikTok. Every ethnicity, every race, every religion, every sexual identity, whatever, or contrary to those things are also on TikTok. Like it's truly a platform where it doesn't seem to be squashing anybody over somebody else. It's basically if you meet the algorithm right as far as having a hook and having the watch time. Do y'all want me to tell you in a separate episode kind of how the algorithm works? And it's not just the TikTok algorithm. It's Instagram Reels algorithm, and it's YouTube Shorts algorithm. You could say whatever you want as long as it kind of hits the algorithm right as in watch time and people swiping away versus how many people have viewed it. Like, it doesn't matter what you're saying, the algorithm will pick you up despite what you were saying, as long as you're keeping people watching and listening to it. So you saw, at least I do on TikTok, a very wide-ranging, different views and opinions and things coming from all different walks of life. I don't see one thing getting squashed over the other thing. And basically, as one TikToker put it, again, I put that caveat, TikToker on TikTok, put it, is that the government is also afraid. It's not just a money grab, but the government is afraid because they're seeing Americans bonding on TikTok. They're seeing Americans from all different walks of life coming to TikTok and bonding and having discussions, and they're kind of realizing the common enemy. It's not each other. It's the people trying to control us. You are worthy of love. This is how I end every show of Geek Therapy Radio. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of giving love. You are worthy of receiving love. And you are worthy of your own self-respect. Thank you for spending some time with me today. Do I got any neighbors out there in Missouri City, Texas? Go check out Carrie's Frozen Delights. It's real Italian ice cream, sorbetto, and gelato. Did I pronounce that right? Sorbetto, gelato. They are at 2603 Cartwright Road in Missouri City, Texas. That's 2603 Cartwright Road, Missouri City, Texas, 77459. Or you can call them, 281-969-5177. 281-969-5177. That's Carrie's Frozen Delights.